What's going on there, guys? We back with another one, and we got to talk about Ryan Clark response to Coach Prime and him admitting that he was being hurt by a lot of his peers making comments about Shedeur, and also what some of the motives may have been behind the comments towards Shedeur Sanders, saying that Shedeur is not the intended target at all. They're using what they're saying about Shedeur Sanders, the narratives they're painting around him to get at Coach Prime, and this is a thing that Coach Prime feels like even goes back to his playing days. You know, the way people view him, how brash he is, and how confident he is. They're using that to kind of attack the son. Now, some people may say, hey, it's football. Shador is not the player that everybody's making him out to be, while others is like, you crazy. Shador is that deal. You can go back and look at what he did in college, what he was able to do at the HBCU level and then stepping up to the Power Five level. His production is what it is. And, without the great offensive line in college, he was still able to produce at a high clip. So we're going to remind people what Coach Prime said briefly, and we're going to get into Ryan Clark's response. Let's check it out.
I know it was a lot of rumors about the next level, and I can't see that. Yeah. I can't see the next level. And I think a couple people who may have taken shots at my kids, they were afraid that I would go. That's where the shots came from. All you got to do is just sit back and listen. People don't want to do that. They want to create these narratives and create these stories and then attach them to a kid that ain't never done nothing wrong.
Yeah. How does that make you feel when you see your colleagues or your peers going in on you, man? Like, how does that make you feel?
No idea, man. You have no idea. We've always been in front of the camera, so they know how to navigate. They know how to handle themselves. Yeah. And you're not gonna catch them in no foolery and no mess. You're not. When you sit up there and say something like he went in a meeting unprepared, like, dude, Shedeur Sanders, who's had 6 different coordinators, who has still functioned and went up, leveled up every time we brought somebody new in, and you're gonna tell me he
every was situation.
You're gonna tell me he had on headphones.
So you a dog, your kid's a dog, and dogs gonna always rise to the top. You know what I mean? That's what I believe. You know what I mean? Then we're talking about
it did hurt. The Bible says God uses the foolish things to confound the wise. So it was some foolish stuff that went on, but you know what? That gave them something that they needed.
Maybe it's my algorithm, but I see Shiloh and Shedeur more than I've ever seen any undrafted guy or 5th-round guy on social media in the history of Instagram, Threads, Twitter, X, whatever it is. Like, those dudes are everywhere. And they caught some of Deion's strays, right? Deion had a level of greatness that was untouchable. Right? Deion could say, yeah, I'm not interviewing with these people because I'm not going to be there in the draft. Deion could say, hey, I already ran 140. I ain't effing with no more of this testing because y'all already know I'm top 5 and it ain't tripping. Watch the film, know who I am. That's the difference between, I think, Deion and who his kids were. And then I think Deion's approach to it made other people, Deion's fame, right? Deion's success, Deion's ability to one day be a head coach in the league. Also, Deion's ability and what he's done in navigating the present, right? When we talk about college of his children and now going into the pros, this was the first thing he couldn't control. And they was like, I got you. Now, it's not about the actual evaluation. Because like what Freddie said, if you evaluate him a certain way, then that's just the evaluation. It was the chatter, right? It was the conversation around him. So many things about Shedeur during the draft process were character, personality. All these things that we can't prove on the outside, right? We were able to watch the film and say, yeah, you know what? Maybe his pocket movement ain't what you want in the first round. Maybe he doesn't have the speed to extend plays. Maybe he doesn't have the rocket arm like some of these dudes. But every report was about something we couldn't refute, also something folks couldn't prove. I feel like Deion's hurt also comes from him always being able to take care of his kids as a father and having a little bit of a feeling that some of this is because of me and I can't take it away from them. You know how it is as dads, man. It's like you want all the good for your kids and none of the bad. And then when anything's bad, that's why kids cry, right? Because when they know when they cry, we want to figure out how to stop you from crying. You hungry, you wet, You tired? Let me tend to that from the time that they're born. And Dion finally got to a point where he was like, damn, can't do it. And I think that's difficult to deal with.
Man, it's been a minute since the NFL draft. And so the fact we're still having these conversations isn't because it's such an overblown topic, but really just showing the draw and how much people are watching this family. Even Shiloh, to a lesser degree, people will be watching. But the fact that Shedeur plays the quarterback position, he will be under a microscope landing in Cleveland, where there is clearly a competition at the QB position. And Joe Flacco isn't the guy of the future. Neither is Kenny Pickett. So you're just left with Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. And many feel like, Shedeur can't be beat out by simply a Dylan Gabriel, smaller quarterback, was able to play at Oregon, favorable offensive lines. Like I say, he's a smaller guy. And so Shedeur wasn't afforded some of those same luxuries as far as the offensive line and different things because he played for his father. And, at Colorado and at Jackson State. And so uh, people feel like the speed that he may process the game may be an underrated attribute. I think that is, in my opinion, because he didn't get as much time as a lot of these other quarterbacks. I think he's an underrated athlete, and I think his arm is underrated. I think, they overblew the things that you may have questions about with Shador based off who his father was and who knows where some of the bad blood came from, but you could tell Coach Prime is feeling it. I haven't seen him done or do as much media as he has done in prior off seasons, and so that's one thing that kind of is telling. Like, he's looking at a lot of these cats a lot differently now that his son is in a position to go and play NFL football, and you see people like Chris Carter, what they had to say. I think that's probably the one that may have hurt him the worst because if you look at Michael Irvin, Keyshawn Johnson, and others, they are saying what Coach Prime, or favorable things about Shedeur Sanders. The one I feel like when they talk about peers from his era, I'm really just thinking about Chris Carter because I'm trying to think about anyone else who has said anything. Maybe I missed a few, but they talk about his peers. That's the one that comes to mind. Now, but if I am them, I do take in that information too, right? They're getting it from somewhere. And so somebody is saying this. Somebody who's in these rooms is saying this because it's not just a random saying it on social media. And so I would take in that information, at least try to see where it's coming from. This was stuff leading up to the draft, and I saw Coach Prime ended up tracking down the individual who was talking about Shador, and he told the coach, you got to do something about this guy because he's hurting my son's stock pretty much, and he's putting out a false narrative. And so it showed that Coach Prime was and Shador and the whole family was bothered by it the entire time. And I just want to kind of point that out. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Till next time, peace.